everybody to today's webinar. I'm Gabrielle Shaw, and today's webinar is communicating your sustainability story. And thank you very much for Positive Luxury for inviting us to host today. Just to give you a little bit of context, GSC is a global creative communications agency, and over the last 21 years, we've been helping brands and entrepreneurs to identify, galvanize, and communicate their sustainability stories. And this is a subject very close to our hearts. And we're proud to say we have a track record of making good corporate citizenship desirable, even when this wasn't necessarily high on the agenda as it is today. And we see our mission within the space really is making sustainability desirable. And we've worked with brands from Starbucks and their literacy program to working with Lewis Gordon Pugh, the original environmental campaigner, and Selfridge's Project Ocean, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, at the request of Diana from Positive Luxury, and then a lot of work in the arts space. And just as a starting point, times have changed. Consumers demand much more from businesses and brands. Who you are has become more important than what you make and sell. Consumers actively seek information on a company's goodness and corporate citizenship. Trust and transparency are of critical importance to a brand and must be positively and proactively managed. Our modern world faces many serious challenges, but eyes have opened to the potential for business to be part of the solution, working alongside government and individuals. We are deep in the moment for companies to lead from the front with the support of employees and passionate customers. No longer can business leaders focus on short-term goals. The new model CEOs are taking action by addressing the issues of our times and taking a personal interest in the success of society. Charitable giving has moved from issuing a check in the back room to front and center on the shop floor. Everyone participates, from the most senior stakeholders and everyday employees to consumers, to customers and communities. And without a doubt, the wider world is watching, so getting it right is critical. CSR has matured to become more inclusive, bringing new and unique voices to the table. And with that, we see the opportunity for vibrant innovation and more widespread integrated adoption of social responsibility by the world's most powerful companies. Brands that have begun to understand that simply taking costs is not enough. With trust at an all-time low, brands are beginning to assume their roles in the long-term view and test solutions for tackling issues about how we will live in the future. Business is the new social institution, so push the issue that your brand is passionate about and position the issue to be as important to your business as it is to selling products and services. And in today's webinar, we will look at starting your journey, who and where are you now, defining your purpose, vision, and values, and 3, how to best sell your story internally and externally. And I'm aware that a lot of people joining the webinar will be at different phases in the journey, some just starting out, and others who are perhaps more established in this space. Hopefully over the next 20 to 30 minutes, you will benefit from understanding how clearly defining and communicating who you are and your values, and beginning your journey to positive change. Now, the topic of sustainability is not new. It started visibly gaining traction in the 70s, with Greenpeace and World Health Organization, and today, the weather disasters are a living legacy of past neglect. What has changed is the speed at which the world is moving in this direction. We are now out of time. People are now acting with the houses on fire mentality, which was artfully put and said with the impact by young campaigner Greta Thunberg, leading in, who has captured the hearts and minds of young people across the globe. Mass mobilization is seeing everyone act now, and to add to this, consumers are also demanding more from businesses and brands. And let's not forget, given that we're talking about communications, news outlets are covering the crisis of the environment and sustainable issues as the top agenda on a daily basis. The next generation of activists and brands, rightly and wrongly, are capturing the world's attention. So it's a uniquely powerful moment for luxury brands to wrap up their identities in how they intend to make the world a better place, and a chance for their customers to join them in creating a vision for a better future. This is a quote that I find particularly inspiring in terms of the role of brands. The most important brands in the world make you feel something. They do that because they have something they want to change. And as customers, you want to be part of that change. These companies feel human. The founders tell us how the world could be. They bear their souls to us. These companies have a reason to exist over and above just to make a profit, and they have a purpose. Yes, we admire the product they make, but the thing we love most about them is the change they are making. And communicating your sustainability story is now both an imperative and a great opportunity. In the age of distraction, there is nothing more powerful than making people care and emotionally connecting. And this is what we're going to talk about today in terms of the how. Just a second, I'm just getting a message here. Can everybody hear? Yes, okay. Just on this page, I'm just going to gloss over this one because we are on quite a tight timeline today. But the idea of sustainability is quite wide-ranging. You know, we love the UN Sustainable Development Goals just because it shows the breadth of what sustainability covers these days. And the idea of brave brands, we've got a few examples here of brave brands who are turning their business models on their head and going for something much beyond product. I'm now going to get into the piece on how you start your journey. And the first piece really is, where are you today? Selfridge, and I was asked specifically by Diana to talk about some of the work we've done for Selfridge's Project Ocean, so I'm going to weave some of that through this. But the first piece really is starting your journey. Who and where are you now? And the thing that everybody says is they don't even know where to start. And I think there's such a worry by everybody, even the most confident brands. And this is one of the biggest worries from Selfridges at the beginning, you know, that you're not doing everything right. And how can you start if you might put yourself open to criticism? But for us, it's about everybody must start. And it's about starting and being honest about where you are and that you're on your journey, and sharing the fact that you're on a journey with all of your communities and stakeholders, and knowing who you're not. Stay out of that sandbox. Don't try to play where in an area that's not true to your brand. And storytell why you care. You know, what sparked this? Where did this inspiration come from? And it's this piece of getting started is really start where you mean to be. And one of the things that we find that where we help the most brands is really deciding where they can start and which areas they're comfortable with. And it's really about being brave. It's about making a leap and saying, we're going to do something, pick something that's doable and that you can commit to, and putting a stake in the ground, and then growing it into something that ideally is a longer term mission. And the second piece is define your sustainability, purpose, vision, and values. And we've got a chart here, which we do a lot of workshopping, working with brands to help them identify the areas they want to focus on. And this is something that's worked quite well for us. So we thought it would be worth sharing with you. And the first thing is passion. You must believe in what you stake yourself on. It's imperative that senior management believe in this passion flows through the rest of the business. The second piece is zeitgeist. This is really important given where we are today and being able to make a difference. The ability to spot a shift before it comes mainstream and be the one to harness this. Find a promise and positioning that people will care about, and ensure that will be relevant and part of something bigger. And that's really about being future facing and bold. Capabilities. What are you good at? Be true to your brand and do only what you can uniquely do. And a lot of that's really about tone of voice. You know, being able to say things in a way that's true to your brand. And when you see that campaign, you know, well, of course those people will have done it because that's the perfect thing, you know, that will have created in terms of how they speak and how they've always spoken in terms of their brand DNA. And again, this is not something that's easy to do overnight. It's something you really have to work at. You have to do a lot of research and quite a lot of soul searching to begin you on your journey. And some of the things that would be helpful for, you know, in terms of this is really looking at the following things. Have a clear vision and simple aims, you know, relevancy, be compelling. Map where you're headed, plan to communicate it simple and clearly. Trace the vision end to end, supply chain, employees, products, manufacturing, marketing, experiential, creative, customers, social, sharing, and be empowering, not doom and gloom. There's a huge role for humor, saying it like it is, but helping people have a stake in the future that's better. And that's a very powerful position if you can get it right. But people are looking for something that's bigger than themselves, and it's a real confidence move for a brand to be able to be part of something bigger and to be braver, and to have a shared vision that they can share with their consumers and stakeholders. For us, it's about having a stake in the future, being a disruptor, a future gazer, and being pioneering and visionary. You know, what we love is for brands, and you don't go there overnight, but we love for brands to plan for legacy and leaving the brand a better place. The next piece really is about the amplification. It's about successfully communicating your story internally and externally. And we're going to use specifically here some work on Selfridges and Project Ocean as a case history. There was a particular, they have a wonderful creative and visual merchandising team that made bringing all of this to life in their store completely extraordinary, and it was a very wonderful thing for us to be able to be involved in. And we're going to start by which pieces of that worked. And this piece here, the one we talk about, the communication and the amplification, this is the piece, which, as we're talking about communication, that's most important. Once you know where you're going, it's really making a really rich and compelling campaign. And in terms of this one, leadership, we were very lucky in Selfridges having Lana Weston, who was behind the campaign from day one. She and a childhood friend, Jonathan Bailey from ZSL, had a passion for the ocean and were worried about the future and wanted to do something about it. And it came from a really strong place of wanting to make a difference, but it was also that piece of then being able to figure out how they can make a difference. But right from the beginning, Alana was behind the campaign, being visionary about it, and she took a very democratic approach to it in terms of being able to be confident enough to bring in creative communities, to use the store as a platform, to be able to collaborate with experts and NGOs and artists. I know when in the beginning pieces, when we were looking at doing a lot of risk analysis, some people said, my goodness, you're bringing in Greenpeace. And actually he was one of the most fantastic spokespeople we could have, because it really allows you to say things that you can't say yourself. And it made a really multifaceted element to the campaign. But that was all led by having a strong leader behind it and a story. Another piece that was also quite helpful from a leadership perspective and being generous was the fact that Selfridges didn't sell a lot of fish at the time. So that was something that it was, again, a really big signal that they wanted to stand for something bigger and they wanted to make change. And one of the most fun areas next really is collaborators. This is an area where very, very rich territory. And this is something that brands are afraid to ask to work with collaborators and to really think about how that might work and how they might look at it. And I think the first piece is really be really brave, say the things your CEO can't, and think carefully, of course, think carefully who you partner with, but aim high. For us in Selfridges, we were incredibly lucky to be able to have people like Queen Noor. We had Sylvia Earle, the Queen of the Ocean, who's done an amazing TED Talk. We were very, very lucky to have Prince Charles, who is, again, did an internal speech for the team, alongside a host of incredible, we had chefs, we had artists from Chris Levine through to Justin Hackenworth. And it pieced all of it, Hugh Friendly-Whittingstall, it pieced all of the things together, because these people had very different things to say, but it all came to painting a picture of what needed to be done to save the oceans. And that piece, I think, also with collaborators is be confident in them. So I think that was our biggest learning here, really, is to trust your spokespeople and let them go, let them be passionate. We didn't message Greenpeace to the ends of the earth. We trusted that they would say the right things, and they were unbelievably powerful. And to be able to get them on an evening news program or a global news program that went around the world, that said a lot more than we could, really, in that instance. And the next piece, really, which has a huge part of it, is lexicon and tone of voice. And again, this is different to every single brand, but to show you a few examples from Project Ocean. it's really how do you brand the change? And some of the things that we felt were really most important is creating some terms that people could understand. So we crafted the term retail activism, and it was a phrase that we really felt resonated in terms of nobody had been using it before. We added a big layer onto that by drawing in Catherine Hamnett, who was the original fashion activist. And so we were able to use her as a spokesperson. She was able to design some amazing slogans and t-shirts that went around the world. And they were a wonderful backdrop for imagery and for a gigantic piece of work that was outside the Selfridges for the duration of the program. And through that, there were a whole load of other layers, of that. It was about the tone of voice, and about humor was a huge piece. We didn't want to be worthy. We wanted to educate. And I'm going to go on to in a little bit more about how we use some of that lexicon to contextualize things for people, because that was also incredibly important. And I think one of the things too is being able to be playful. We had a bucking whale, which we used, which was about getting photos, but it was also fun. It was the type of thing that you would absolutely expect to see in Selfridges. Again, on the night of the launch, we had Jonah and the Whale playing again. It was tongue in cheek. It was fun, and those were things that really only Selfridges could pull off in the unique way, and because of the relationship they have with their customers. And just moving on to the next piece of here, it's in terms of communicating and methods to amplifying your messages. And this is really about what you do internally and externally. A lot of the things here were about having a huge amount of events, so anybody could dial in a multiple of ways, from having debates that were done with Intelligence Squared, having a fashion installation exhibition by having living artwork, a living choral display. There were a lot of different ways somebody else could come in. There were demonstrations by chefs. So, and I think one of the biggest piece of it is actually, again, contextualizing it. So Selfridges has these wonderful windows that they were able to educate the world. And it wasn't saying, if you don't do this, the fish are going to die. It was about putting it into context, showing them. There were some wonderful ones on. They did a jellyfish and chips wagon that they did a picture. I think it's coming up in a chart in a second, in one of the slides in a second. But that was really about saying, this is what you're going to have. There's not going to be any cod left. This is what you're going to be left with. People love the sense of humor, and it was just an incredibly visual piece, but everything came back to facts and figures. It was really well researched. And, one of the things we have up on screen here is a fish guide. It helped educate people as to the traffic light system in terms of which fish were endangered, which ones weren't, what you should be eating. And again, part of our role was to make other fishes stylish. We got something in the Going Up column in Sunday Times Style, which was about Gurnard at the time that nobody was eating. So it was a really multifaceted one, but it is partly what got momentum. And some of these things also were about getting the momentum internally and externally. Part of this was equally important to their teams inside the business. We were thrilled with the fact that, from the top down, it became embedded in the culture. The store came to life. If you've seen this visual, this is, again, an amazing jellyfish sculpture that went through the main escalators. But all the sorts of things, again, which got some of the employees involved too. We had really fun dive men and women carrying some of the Catherine Hamnett signs. But the other piece here is making it something where the employees themselves could get involved and raise money. And one of the very happy things that came out of this is that the internal teams, I think, even raised as much money as actually what was what was raised externally. And they were part of one of the main goals was to create a marine protected area. And there was an opportunity for some of those employees to actually go and see the marine protected area and be part of the continuation of that. So all those pieces really came together to have it that something internally, the teams were absolutely behind it. And moving on from this is really about galvanizing. It was about taking people on the journey and then galvanizing both your internal teams and your external teams towards change. And one of the things, now this has been a bit of a gallop through here, and I notice I'm at 19 minutes and 44. So there won't be that much more time, but there will be time and questions or to follow on from that. But here really it's about aiming big, being brave, and a lot of what Selfridges is incredibly good about really here is being, be, don't tell, be the change you want to be, do something, make a stake, make something happen, and then continue. The latest announcement from the amazing Selfridges teams has been that they've cut palm oil, and that's, I made a commitment to cut palm oil, and these are things. They're continuing with the journey, and they're continuing to make change. They've done things that were doable. They've achieved them, and they've continued them. But for us, our advice would be the media are very open. Don't be scared. The media open to a story about being part of something better and bigger, and brands that are trying to change things. Yes, you need to be transparent, but start with something you can do it well, and get on with it. It's good business to be doing good. And one final thought to leave you from, this is a commonly misunderstood Charles Darwin quote, and they say it's not the most intellectual that survived, it's not the strongest that survived, but it's the one that is able to adapt and adjust to changing environment in which it finds itself. And everything has changed in this landscape. The way brands need to communicate, purpose is at the center of any communications you should do about a brand. It used to be on the side, and equally how brands behave, and that core of purposefulness is right at the center of where they operate as business people and what they produce. And now I think we're going to follow on to some Q&As, which I think should be coming up onto the screen.
Hi, Gabrielle. Yes, I think we have some questions in the Q&A box.
The first question is, the audio wasn't fantastic. Yes, we can make the presentation available. We have the details. Any more questions?
I think we have. Oh.
Got another one coming up. Okay, we've got a lot of people asking for further information, which we can supply you with, and I'm sure that the team from Positive Luxury can link us all up.
Yes.
There's quite a bit more information. There was so much to tell in this story, and even some of the messaging behind some of and it's just the stuff that's in the public domain, all the lovely articles. We'd be really happy to share it. It was just such a skip through this deck that we didn't get to go through very much of it. This is an interesting question. Asking, you work for a medium-sized organization with about 50 employees. We don't have a dedicated sustainability person. Where should this responsibility sit? In my opinion, going for the brave and the bold, it should sit with the business leader. And then it's a really interesting one, because we feel it should be embedded right from the top at the culture of the business. Often marketing and comms are a big part of that, but it really should have that piece where the senior team agree on the vision. One of the things that worked incredibly well for us, we were so lucky to have a lot of Jonathan Bailey and Alana's time and her amazing creative team that were really involved in this from the beginning. And that's partly why we were able to make bold statements, but we also were able to do a really compelling campaign. Would we do another one on this? Yes, we would do another presentation if Positive Luxury would like us to have it. How can brands develop their purpose? And I think there's a lot of good questions coming up here. Thank you. The purpose piece, again, we had to skip through that. When we have a presentation on finding your purpose, which usually takes me about an hour to present. And I know I spoke quite quickly on here because I have my lovely colleague sitting beside me giving me the watch every few seconds saying that I was about to be over time, and I can already speak quite quickly. But the purpose piece is really about knowing really well who you are, your core values as a business, and then looking at what you do and what could you do given what your business is, whatever it is you make or what your services are. How could you harness those to do something better? Whether the Project Ocean piece started as a platform to educate. We first started with, we're going to use the store as a place for all these amazing windows to educate people so we could work with these NGOs and with the ZSL. It actually quite quickly geared, which was a brave decision for all of us, was to move into the role beyond platform as educator into genuine brand as campaigner. Towards the end of it, we also were at the World Ocean Summit where they created the Selfridges Declaration, which was absolutely not in our plan at the beginning in terms of risk assessment and playing it a little bit safer. But it worked brilliantly, and again, that was completely down to a lot of being incredibly inspiring and being bold. And the fact that we were able to change the campaign as momentum worked. All of these things, if you look at Extinction Rebellion, they move at pace. 2 months ago, we were in a totally different place. Everything is constantly changing, that paradigm, and it's something you need to be ready for. And if you're going to do this, you need to be ready to act quickly and make some quick decisions and be bold. There's a lot more questions. What other brands do you think are doing well in the sustainability sector? I mean, it's a really interesting question because we see sustainability as being very broad as a topic. I mean, as a woman and as a predominantly female business, we love the brands that are speaking to women right now. There are some fantastic examples of that, be it some of the Always work. We loved some of I personally loved, and I know everybody talks about this one already, so it's not the most original example, but I absolutely love the Nike one about Serena. I've played it to my daughters many times. I think we like campaigns that help people be better and bigger. We loved IKEA. Like, who would have thought, IKEA would have the confidence and the boldness, also the generosity to reupholster their sofas. I mean, they have a couple of their brands that probably everybody in the world has had in some time in their home, in their student house, whatever it's going to be. And the fact that those things that maybe only cost you £300, £200, they're going to still reupholster them for you because they don't want you to throw them away, or they're going to rent them to you. That whole piece of changing a business model and the boldness which goes around that. Some of them are about having a brilliant tone of voice. Innocent, we love. I mean, we've worked with Innocent. What other ones we want to talk about that we had down here? We had Everlane down about being clean, one of the world's cleanest denims. We love the idea, and this is, again, everybody has been talking about some of these ones, but just some of the bigger picture things like, what's your role? This whole shift, and who would have believed this idea that Patagonia would be buying tracts of land to give back to the government? I mean, who would have thought in a million years a brand would do that? But they're not always huge things. Sometimes there's campaigns that, again, don't always get seen as front and center about CSR. But one of the things I always think is amazing, there's a lot of brands who have programs about getting people to go back to school and get high school education. If you ever speak to somebody who's been one of the people how their life has changed by getting high school education that you never thought would be possible, somebody who works in a factory, those are simple pieces. They're not ones that people talk about all the time, but you do get to see some of that stuff. But there's a lot of different ones. And I think I might need to go on to a different question because I'm going to run out of time. When using Instagram, would you suggest you tell your story and educate your followers without losing the essence of the journey? I think that's one of those ones about great storytelling. There's, think about your campaign, think about making it visual. How do you tell a story? That was one of the things when we used Selfridges as an example of amazing visuals that really painted a picture, but they also educated. Instagram can also be fantastic for name checking the people that you've gotten involved. A lot of Instagram is about who's following you and what influence you have, so it's a really easy way for you to quickly index against mobilizing and getting people on board. We always aim for a very impactful visual, but also, words and pictures, that piece. Again, how do you use some of your internal people to help tell Instagram stories? That piece of being, user-generated content, any of those sorts of things we think would be really an important part of that. Moving on, starting a fashion brand, how to differentiate from other brands having similar circular and sustainable values and stay credible. That's a really good question. And it's hard to know exactly what your fashion brand is doing. I think the first piece about this is from perspective, I guess here would be looking at the circularity of fashion and being attuned and aware of that. You know, some of those pieces that I know Positive Luxury is incredible about, thinking about things like how many wears are you expecting and how many owners do you expect to have from this item. Really knowing where the source is of the whole piece. What are you doing that's different from other people? Are there other products, the way you're sourcing it? Is there a local story? And there's so many layers, and I'd be really happy to talk more offline on that one. Are you happy for me to keep going on this, by the way? Positive Luxury, there's more questions that are popping up. I'm happy to do more if you want me to do more.
Yes, you can do the last questions, and then we will
okay. Sustainability is often seen as luxury for the few. How to translate a wider audience that sustainability is key to any brand is not only expensive or exclusive. On the other hand, is inclusive, more honest, and helps growth and learning. I think this is such an interesting conversation just about the way the world is going. You know, it's that piece of we all have to be understanding. You know, I'm struggling in some ways to bring this into my own life, you know, to having less and so often buying better, but we're not buying at all. You know, when you look at so many of these things, you know, sometimes the luxury in travel is not going somewhere, should we be going to those remote places where we know we're damaging that habitat, and should we not be making them desirable? Is there a role for the brands and the communicators in tackling that? It is probably about people really understanding what it is you're selling and kind of what you stand for. People are still going to buy things, but it's making sure they're more thoughtful, and it's going to mean more to them, the brands they choose to be associated with, and the ones that inspire them, and the ones that allow them to be part of a bigger journey. There's another one, I think one more. What can you do when you work with a small brand that doesn't have large budget to share all the product the brand is working on? For example, my brand has worked on a documentary and traditional PR is not working to share this project with the world. Again, that's a one that would be probably quite difficult to answer without knowing more, but some of the questions there, some of the things that smaller brands have is this huge opportunity to think boldly and to put their founder on the stage, to lay a stake in the ground, and to give it their all. You know, a lot of brands, even the bigger brands, there are more layers to communicate. You know, of course, we're advocating that people be transparent and they take risks, but not all brands will. But you have that opportunity. You know, you could be nimbler, you can be hungrier, you can be more passionate. So those sorts of pieces, in terms of maybe traditional PR is, you know, we take a very layered approach to PR. It's not just about being in one area. Are there op-eds that you might look to do? How do you be part of a zeitgeist and part of a trend? How do you be an expert in that area where you might be able to say things others couldn't say? And I think that's most of us for time. I think we've answered all of them, hopefully. Thank you very much. And again, you've been a great audience, and thank you to Positive Luxury for
thank you, Gabrielle.
Join today.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.